A darkening sky casts long shadows as smoke rises into the evening air. Animals are slaughtered with deliberate solemnity. Two parties walk silently between the split carcasses, their figures flickering in the uncertain glow of torchlight. There are no microphones, no lawyers, only silence, heavy with anticipation until the unspoken oath is sealed. This ancient ceremony marks the birth of a covenant, a binding contract with life or death consequences. However, this ritual was not unique to Abraham. It was a widespread practice that shaped kingdoms, forged alliances, defined civilizations across the Bronze Age. Now, let's pause and consider. What does it mean that the God of Abraham chose a ritual form so deeply rooted in ancient political culture? This ritual's power lay in its solemnity and permanence. It was a living contract that transcended mere words and ink, binding parties through shared risk and divine witness. The ceremony's imagery evokes a raw, primal understanding of justice, where the breaking of an oath was met not just with human judgment, but with catastrophic consequences believed to be enforced by the gods themselves. To ensure full transparency, please note that this video uses AI-generated visuals to bring history to life. Faith and facts, where ancient mysteries meet modern exploration. Our thesis. Genesis 15 captures a moment of profound significance when God formalizes his promise to Abraham through a ritual commonly referred to as a cutting of the covenant. This ceremony involves sacrificial animals, a deep sleep experienced by Abraham, and a terrifying divine presence passing between the divided carcasses. Critics frequently dismiss this scene as theological fiction, a symbolic narrative rather than a reflection of historical practice. Yet, scholars and archaeologists have uncovered striking parallels between this biblical ritual and ancient Near Eastern suzerain vassal treaties. Far from being an isolated event, the covenant ceremony embodies a deeply embedded system of law and culture that regulated land ownership, loyalty, and divine sanction. Tonight, we will delve into the archaeology of covenant making, from clay tablets to wall reliefs, and highlight a specific ritual element in Genesis 15 that uniquely confirms its authenticity within the Bronze Age context. This detail challenges the widespread notion that the story is a late invention. By investigating the broader cultural and religious context of the ancient Near East, this episode reveals how the covenant ceremony was not only a legal act, but also a profound theological statement. It communicated a worldview in which human agreements were inseparably intertwined with divine authority, reinforcing the sacredness of promises made under oath. The skeptic's claim. Skeptics often argue that the covenant ceremony described in Genesis 15 is a theological invention, crafted centuries later as a symbolic narrative designed to legitimize Israel's claims to land and divine favor. They contend that the ritual reflects ideas originating in the post-exilic or monarchic periods rather than Bronze Age customs. However, this argument weakens considerably when examined alongside archaeological evidence. The formal covenant, known in Hebrew as Brit, corresponds remarkably well with documented treaties found in Hittite, Assyrian, and Babylonian archives dating back to the 2nd millennium BC. These treaties consistently share defining features: the sacrifice of animals, oath-taking stipulated conditions, curses for breach, and, most notably, the symbolic act of walking between split carcasses. At the ancient city of Nuzi, circa 1500 BC, tablets describe legal contracts, sealed through ritual slaughter and solemn oath ceremonies that closely mirror the imagery presented in Genesis 15. Likewise, the messy, steely, and Hittite treaty texts emphasize the presence of a divine witness during covenant-making, underscoring a political and spiritual worldview that is anything but fabricated. If Genesis were a later myth, why preserve such a culturally specific and intricate ritual? Moreover, the presence of these treaty rituals across multiple civilizations highlights a shared legal culture in the ancient Near East. This interconnectedness makes it unlikely that the Genesis account would fabricate or distort such precise details. as these customs were well known and documented by neighboring peoples of Israel's environment and time. Excavations at Nuzi and Mari reveal that these covenant rituals were far more than mere formalities. They governed critical aspects of life, including land tenure, political alliances, and even personal obligations. The ceremony's gravity was underscored by the genuine risk of divine punishment looming over any party that might violate the oath. Genesis 15's description of Abraham's deep sleep tardoma in Hebrew and the passage of a smoking firepot and flaming torch bear remarkable resemblance to Near Eastern depictions of divine presence during treaty-making ceremonies, suggesting that this narrative preserves a genuine cultural memory rather than a purely dramatic invention. Moreover, these covenant treaties often required the suzerain, the overlord, to take the first oath, highlighting God's initiative in Abraham's covenant, a detail entirely consistent with ancient customs. The covenant's legal force rested on the mutual acceptance of binding conditions, just as the biblical text records. The physical division of animal carcasses was more than symbolic ritualism. It served as a tangible reminder of the dire consequences of breaking the oath. Walking between the split animals was tantamount to declaring, "May I become like these if I break my word." This chilling image intensifies the seriousness of the covenant and demonstrates its rootedness in real, lived tradition. In addition, the invocation of curses in these treaties was no mere formality. It functioned as a social and theological safeguard to uphold justice, with the belief that divine retribution would be swift and severe upon those who violated sacred oaths. This underlines the covenant's role as a foundation, not only for legal agreements, but for maintaining social order and divine justice. Imagine yourself standing inside an ancient Near Eastern court. Clay tablets meticulously inscribed with fine cuneiform are stacked on shelves. The air carries the mingled scents of oil, incense, and smoke from freshly slaughtered animals. The ritual space is dimly lit, torches flickering against stone walls adorned with carvings of deities. Here, the suzerain and his vassal come face to face in a solemn ceremony. The tension is almost tangible. Sacrificial animals, a heifer, a goat, and a ram, are slaughtered and split lengthwise, their halves arranged carefully to form a pathway. The parties walk between these carcasses, solemnly invoking curses upon themselves should they violate the agreement. The description in Genesis 15 fits this scene perfectly. Archaeologists have uncovered clay seal impressions and multiple copies of treaties that include ritualistic language invoking curses and divine judgment, emphasizing the covenant's serious and binding nature. These artifacts highlight the critical role ritual played in legitimizing political power and land claims in the ancient world. The covenant, therefore, was not merely a legal document. It was a cosmic event, an agreement sanctified and witnessed by divine forces. This ritualistic enactment also functioned as a powerful visual and communal reinforcement of the treaty's seriousness. Witnesses, often including priests and officials, bore collective responsibility to remember and uphold the agreement, ensuring that the covenant was both a private commitment and a public social contract with lasting consequences. Some scholars emphasize the symbolic significance of the animals chosen for the ceremony. The heifer, goat, and ram each held ritual importance in Bronze Age religions, representing fertility, strength, and sacrifice, respectively. Their use in covenant rituals linked social order with divine sanction, reinforcing the seriousness of the agreement. Furthermore, the smoking firepot and flaming torch described in Genesis 15 are unique elements. No other ancient treaty texts explicitly record a visible divine manifestation passing between the animals, a feature that may reflect the distinctive monotheistic theology emerging in Abraham's culture, one that blends ancient ritual practice with a new revelation. Excavations at prominent sites such as Alalakh and Ugarit reveal similar treaty ceremonies, demonstrating how widespread and consistent these customs were throughout the region. Additionally, the covenant's focus on land inheritance echoes widespread legal concerns of the time, Land was not only wealth, but power and identity. Finally, the scene of Abraham falling into a trance-like sleep before the ceremony underscores the spiritual weight of the covenant. This was far more than political maneuvering. It was a sacred commitment with eternal consequences. The spiritual dimension of Abraham's trance, coupled with the divine presence manifested in the ritual, suggests that this ceremony was also a transformative moment. It shaped Abraham's understanding of his relationship with God and his role in the unfolding history of his descendants, emphasizing the covenant's personal and communal significance. Contextual proof. Genesis situates this covenant at a pivotal moment in Abraham's journey. Before he has acquired any land, yet God promises him descendants and territory. This narrative captures the tensions present in ancient Near Eastern societies struggling with questions of land control, migration, and shifting political alliances. Ask yourself this critical question: if this covenant ceremony was merely a later fiction, why does it preserve such precise and detailed ritual elements? Why does it reflect a complex, legal, spiritual, and cultural system so deeply embedded in Bronze Age society? More importantly, why does it include a divine presence actively sealing the treaty, a feature unique to Israel's emerging faith? The answer points unmistakably to authenticity. Genesis records a genuine covenant rooted in lived experience, ritual practice, and historical reality. This covenant was not invented, but faithfully remembered. The narrative's placement at this transitional moment in Abraham's life underscores the covenant's function as a foundation for the unfolding biblical story. It reflects ancient concerns with land, identity, and divine promise that resonate through the entire biblical tradition, affirming the story's enduring theological and historical weight. The repercussions of this covenant echo throughout the entire biblical narrative. The possession of land, the outpouring of divine blessing, and the identity of Israel as a people are all anchored in this defining moment. Archaeological finds scattered across ancient Canaan, including boundary stones and land-grant inscriptions, confirm that sacred covenants regulated land tenure in the ancient world. This evidence validates Genesis' portrayal of the covenant as both a spiritual and legal institution. Moreover, the divine self-identification in Genesis 15-7, where God declares himself as the God who brought you out of your situates, the covenant firmly within, Abraham's personal history, and underscores God's active role. Ancient Near Eastern treaties often included such self-identifications to reinforce the authority and legitimacy of the suzerain. Another important layer emerges when we consider the covenant as an ancestral memory. Abraham's descendants did not simply tell this story as myth. They regarded it as the foundational event defining their collective identity. Finally, the covenant's solemnity anticipates Israel's later covenant theology, demonstrating a continuous tradition rooted firmly in Bronze Age practice rather than later invention. In addition, this covenant sets the stage for the biblical theme of land as both a divine gift and a source of communal identity. It foreshadows the ongoing struggles and promises connected to territory throughout Israel's history, linking the personal story of Abraham with the national destiny of his descendants. Conclusion. Now, here is the detail we promised. The smoking firepot and flaming torch passing between the animal halves symbolize God himself entering into the covenant, not as a distant, uninvolved deity, but as an active participant. This unique element distinguishes Abraham's covenant from all other Near Eastern treaty rituals, combining ancient legal forms with a divine presence that remains unparalleled. Genesis 15, therefore, does not record a myth or allegory, but a profound historical event deeply embedded in authentic Bronze Age practice. It reveals a God who personally commits to his promises, a fact that challenges skeptics to reconsider the origins of Israel's faith and history. This understanding invites us to see the covenant not just as a historical artifact, but as a living testimony to a relationship that has shaped the faith and identity of millions for millennia, emphasizing the personal nature of divine commitment and human response. To ensure full transparency, please note that this video uses AI-generated visuals to bring history to life. If you found the evidence presented in this deep dive compelling, know this: the mission of Faith and Facts is to systematically dismantle skepticism by demonstrating that the Bible stands as the most archaeologically confirmed book in human history. To explore the full scope of the evidence, be sure to watch our full-length documentary compilation, Genesis on Trial: Archaeology versus Skepticism, where all these proofs are tied together. If you wish to support this work, please hit the like button, subscribe for weekly updates presenting fresh evidence, and share this video with at least one skeptic you know. Because some promises are made in blood and remembered forever. Join us on this journey of discovery, where faith meets facts, and ancient mysteries are brought to light through rigorous scholarship and modern exploration. Your support makes this mission possible. Thank you for being part of it.